We're told to be kind, to be generous, to give, to compromise, to be the bigger person. And while all of these are beautiful ideas, they're often taught at the cost of one thing: yourself. Think about how often you've abandoned your needs, not out of love, but fear. Fear of disappointing someone, fear of not being seen as good enough, fear that love must be earned by overgiving, overperforming, overstretching. But here's the quiet truth: no relationship, no matter how romantic or loyal, can make up for the one you're missing with yourself. And yet, self-love is misunderstood. It's reduced to spa days and bubble baths, or dismissed as selfishness, wrapped in pretty language. But real self-love? It's not aesthetic. It's not indulgent. It's not ego. It's a relationship, the one you have with your inner voice, your limits, your values, the one that decides how you let people treat you, the one that shapes whether you speak your truth or silence yourself just to keep the peace. Most of us are raised to believe that love is something we earn, that it's conditional. Be attractive, be agreeable, be useful, be less of a burden. This conditioning creates a hunger, not just for love, but for permission to rest, to say no, to have needs. But self-love rewrites that script. It says, you are already worthy, not after you lose the weight, not after you succeed, not after someone else chooses you. Now as you are, messy, incomplete, still becoming. And when you believe that, you stop begging for crumbs. You stop chasing people who only love the version of you that makes them comfortable. You stop saying yes when your body screams no, because self-love gives you a compass, not for how to get love, but for how to receive it properly. It also changes how you relate to others. When you don't love yourself, every interaction becomes a performance. You say what you think they want to hear. You laugh even when it hurts. You become hyper-aware of how you're perceived, constantly editing yourself to be likable, even lovable, in someone else's eyes. But when you do love yourself, truly, something shifts. You stop performing and start relating. You stop negotiating your worth and start honoring it. And this isn't about becoming self-absorbed or emotionally unavailable. It's about becoming real. It's about showing up to your relationships, not as a hollow version of who you think you should be, but as a whole person who knows how to stand alone without shrinking and connect without losing yourself. That's why self-love is not optional. It's not a luxury. It's a requirement for any healthy connection, romantic or otherwise. Because here's what happens when you don't have it. You confuse love with validation. You let others define your value. You tolerate mistreatment because you're more afraid of being alone than being unhappy. You become someone who looks for mirrors, not partners. Someone who can't be alone with their own thoughts without wondering who else might be thinking about them. And worst of all, you start settling for relationships that drain you, for friendships that belittle you, for lives that look good from the outside but feel hollow from the inside. But here's the powerful part. You can break that cycle, not by changing who you are, but by changing what you accept. And that begins with understanding what self-love really looks like. It's not loud. It's not performative. It doesn't need to be announced. It looks like boundaries, like walking away from what doesn't serve you, even if it's familiar. It looks like grace, not perfection. It looks like choosing rest when the world glorifies exhaustion. It looks like trusting your gut, even when others call it irrational. Because once you start loving yourself, really loving yourself, you realize that the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one that teaches you how to never abandon your own heart again. When you don't love yourself, you don't just suffer internally. Your relationships suffer too. You begin to tolerate things you shouldn't, accept love that doesn't nourish you, and shrink yourself just to be accepted. You say yes when you want to say no. You make yourself small in rooms that require your full presence. And in doing so, you teach others how to treat you, not through your words, but through the quiet compromises you make against your own worth. One of the most common consequences of neglected self-love is codependency, the invisible thread that ties your self-worth to someone else's approval. In this dynamic, love isn't shared freely, it's negotiated. You keep giving, hoping you'll be seen. You silence your needs, hoping that sacrificing them will make you more lovable. But it never works that way. Relationships built on self-abandonment become emotional traps. They exhaust you, and eventually, they break you. Then there's the voice inside your head, the one that's been shaped by years of criticism, rejection, and unrealistic expectations. It doesn't just whisper doubts, it attacks. It tells you you're not good enough, not successful enough, not attractive, or accomplished, or lovable enough. And the more you believe it, the more you begin to search for something, or someone, to fix you. This is how people fall into patterns of validation seeking, always chasing external praise to fill an internal void. But the approval of others can't heal what your own voice continues to tear down. Without self-love, boundaries dissolve. You become the person who's always available, always agreeable, always exhausted. You give your time away to things that don't feed your soul. You overextend yourself to avoid disappointing others. But people-pleasing is just another form of self-neglect. It trades authenticity for approval. And over time, resentment grows. You start to feel invisible, not because others don't see you, but because you've stopped showing up as your full self. Neglecting self-love isn't just a personal issue, it's a relational one. When you don't value yourself, you attract relationships that reflect that lack of value. You settle for surface-level affection. You mistake intensity for intimacy. You confuse possession with love. And even when things feel good, there's an underlying fear that if someone saw the real you, the one behind the performance, they'd leave. But that fear isn't about them. It's about the part of you that hasn't yet learned how to stay. Loving yourself isn't easy. It requires facing the wounds you've spent years avoiding. It means choosing growth over comfort, truth over illusion, and integrity over acceptance. But the alternative, living a life where your happiness depends on someone else's permission, is far more painful. Self-love is what frees you from that prison. And when you begin to choose yourself, not selfishly, but consciously, everything around you starts to shift. The relationships you once clung to no longer fit. The roles you used to play feel foreign. And slowly, you begin to see that the love you were seeking outside was never missing. It was just waiting for you to come home to yourself. Self-love is not the final chapter. It's the prologue. It's not the end of your longing, but the soil from which real intimacy can grow. When you begin to love yourself, you don't become invulnerable to pain or rejection. You don't float above human need. What changes is the way you relate to those needs. You stop approaching love from desperation. You stop demanding that someone else rescue you from the responsibility of being whole. You start seeing love not as a cure, but as a mirror, one that reflects, challenges, and deepens you. This is why the healthiest relationships don't begin with fireworks. They begin with clarity. You know who you are. You've sat with your loneliness. You've honored your fears without letting them dictate your worth. So when love arrives, you're not trying to prove anything. You're not negotiating for scraps. You're able to meet another not from a place of hunger, but from a place of fullness. Not to complete one another, but to witness each other's completeness. Self-love also protects you from the myth that love has to hurt to be real. It teaches you to stop romanticizing emotional chaos, to stop mistaking drama for depth, to stop equating suffering with sincerity. You learn that peace isn't boring, it's sacred. That safety isn't a lack of passion, it's the ground where passion can actually thrive. And most importantly, you realize that love should never cost you your dignity, not your voice, not your sense of self. It's tempting to think of self-love as a checklist: morning affirmations, solo vacations, bubble baths, yoga. But real self-love is far more radical. It's asking hard questions about the life you're building. It's walking away from patterns that feel familiar but harmful. It's choosing partners, friends, and environments that reflect your truth, not just your wounds. It's forgiving yourself, not once, but every time your past tries to convince you that you're not worthy of something better. And that kind of self-love, while deeply personal, is never just for you. It ripples outward. It changes how you speak to others, how you show up in conflict, how you listen, how you forgive, how you love, without possession, without fear, without losing yourself. Because when you no longer seek salvation in someone else, you stop trying to control them. You start to trust that love can be free and still be devoted. That commitment can be chosen, not coerced. That intimacy can be deep without being dependent. Ultimately, self-love is the quiet revolution that transforms everything. It doesn't promise that you'll never be hurt again. It promises that you'll never abandon yourself again, even when you're hurting. It's the internal vow to stay, to listen, to return, to love yourself not because you're perfect, but because you are yours. And from that place, from that sacred, steady place, love becomes something else entirely. Not a search, not a rescue, but a meeting of two whole people, unafraid to be seen and brave enough to be real.